say, kids, what time is it?
Kirk Allen was the first live-action Superman in the 1948 and 1950 Superman serials. He played him as a true blue Boy Scout right out of the comic book. George Reeves hit the small screen in 1952 with The Adventures of Superman, which ran until 1958, after which he was part of several stage adaptations of Superman before his untimely demise in 1959. Other actors that have worn the red and blue spandex to much acclaim include Dean Cain, who donned the cape in the popular ABC series Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, which ran 4 seasons from 1993 to 1997. Tom Welling, who played a young Clark Kent in the series Smallville, which ran 10 seasons on the WB and CW networks respectively. And in cinema, we've seen Brandon Routh wear his undies on the outside for 2006's Superman Returns, and most recently, Henry Cavill as the Man of Steel in the DC Extended Universe, which took Superman into new territory as an unsure, brooding type of character who grapples with a cynical society and choosing to be a hero. But for me, none have portrayed the last son of Krypton's Kal-El with so much charm, optimism, and enthusiasm like Christopher Reeve, who, with director Richard Donner, made us all believe that a man could fly in 1978's Superman the movie. Reeves' Superman leaped from the pages of the comics, and his clumsy, insecure alter ego Clark Kent was a portrayal for the ages. The Reeve Superman film spawned 3 inferior sequels that ran out of gas in 1987, succumbing to declining box office. The 1978 score by John Williams has also become the quintessential theme for all things Superman to this day. Margot Kidder was also, in my opinion, far and away the best screen adaptation of Lois Lane. Kidder's snarky, cocksure, impetuous, Pulitzer-driven reporter for Perry White's Daily Planet has set a benchmark that has not been rivaled by any actress for the role since. For me, it doesn't get any better than Christopher Reeve, Margot Kidder, and Gene Hackman in Richard Donner's Superman the movie. It's the gold standard. Which brings us to the latest screen adaptation of Clark and Lois with the CW's Superman and Lois, starring Tyler Hoechlin as Clark Kent Kal-El, and Elizabeth Tulloch as Lois Lane, and it co-stars Alex Garfin as Jordan Kent, Jordan Elsass as Jonathan Kent, and Emmanuel Criqui as Lana Lang. And now my thoughts on Episode 4, Haywire. Hey everybody, Keith back with another Superman and Lois review. This is Episode 4 called Haywire, and it's kind of funny when I first started watching it, I'm thinking, well, this is kind of the slower episode. I don't know if I'm going to have a lot to talk about, and then I started going through it and clipping out the frame grabs and whatnot, and I realized it was a little more dense than I had originally thought. So let's get started, shall we? So the story opens, it's a flashback to Saskatchewan 6 years ago, and we see Morgan Edge and a couple of people, a team of people, finding a crashed, looks like a ship. It's about the size of a small meteor. Clearly, as viewers, we know it's probably from Krypton, right? And he just says this cryptic line, like, now the resurrection begins. And well, I guess that's kind of what this episode is going to tee up for. So let's move along. So we go to present day, and Edge is attending a Smallville Crows football game for some reason. And again, we see Kyle Cushing, Lana Lang's husband, just completely sucking up to the guy and making all these plans, like what they're going to do with the money that comes in from the mining operation that Edge wants to set up in town. And like, you know, he wants to like renovate the football field, and then he points out Lana, who's leading the cheerleading squad, and makes a point that she works for Edge, to which Edge finds that very curious and invites the Langs, or the Cushings rather, to dinner that night. Also at the game, General Lane, Sam Lane shows up, and Lois doesn't look too thrilled about that, but he's coming to watch his nephews play football. So Jordan finally gets the call. He wants to go into the game, and he's not sure if he should. And of course, Clark tells him to get in there. It's the same thing as practice, and you're going to be fine. Jordan, I think, in the back of his head knows that he might hurt someone if he's not careful. So, practice is one thing, but now it's a game where the intensity's ratcheted up. He's got an opponent he's got to go battle that he hasn't practiced against. So, he's afraid that he might actually hurt someone. Or he might even think that he'll hold back and fail. But Clark, being the ever-supportive dad, sends him in there. And, of course, there's a sack and a fumble because of Jordan and a scoop and score. And the Smallville Crows win the game. And Lane immediately realizes something's rotten in Smallville. He clearly understands now that Jordan's got some of Clark's powers. So after the game, Jordan gets the game ball. He's like Mr. Big Man on campus. They give him a nickname. His name is Short Stack now. So he's fitting in quite well. Meanwhile, back at the house, Lane is berating Lois and Clark for hiding Jordan and not telling him. And also that he's kind of questioning Clark. He's asking Clark if he's losing track of his priorities. He's basically saying that, people aren't seeing you flying around Metropolis anymore. You're spending a lot of time at home. You're coaching a football team, for Christ's sake. And, he thinks that the DOD is going to start to get a little suspicious. They're getting anxious because there's not a lot of Superman sightings anymore. And he does ask Clark, he said, look, let's restore some faith. We want you to be like an escort for a prisoner transfer of Thaddeus Kilgrave, who's basically like one of these psycho geniuses, kind of a Lex Luthor type of a guy, who was radicalized off hating Superman. So this is kind of what Lane tells him here. Oops.
If anything goes wrong, I will be there, but I'm not throwing away time with my family for a show of good faith.
So you're going against my advice?
I don't work for you, Sam.
So Sam decides he's going to stay at the house for a few days and just kind of keep an eye on the whole kit and caboodle that's going on in Smallville. He's just not very trusting. So again, after the game, Jordan's at the post-game dinner. He's just the toast of the town now. And Jonathan's feeling a little left out. And so is a guy we are going to get to know in this episode pretty intimately, a guy named Tag Harris. They're sitting next to Jonathan. Tag's arm was broken at the party back in the pilot episode when Jordan lost control and he used his heat vision and he blew up the campfire and everything. He just exploded all the gas cans and whatnot. Tag was one of the kids hurt. He broke his arm. He's the star wide receiver of the team, and now he's on the shelf and he can't participate and he feels a little left out, and Jonathan feels a little left out we know why Jonathan feels a little left out. So meanwhile, Edge has Lana at dinner and he's really pushing her. He's pushing her to kind of be a more important person. He says that she needs to make a wider impact and use him as a resource. We find out that Lana graduated magna cum laude. She was in all kinds of clubs and did a lot of extracurricular activities in high school and college. So she's one of these doers, a go-getter, a self-motivated person. And it seems like he's trying to somehow use her or manipulate her to do his dirty deeds, if you will. And of course, she's being made uncomfortable, and Kyle, her husband, is completely oblivious to it as usual because he's too busy ramming his nose further and further up Edge's behind.
I pride myself in helping people achieve their best selves.
So there you can see how uncomfortable she is, and Kyle just doesn't see it. And this is one of those cliched tropes, and it's obvious to the viewer. I mean, this guy Edge is no good. He's just he's the mustache twirling capitalist that comes riding into town up to evil deeds, and of course the people in the town don't see it, but everybody else sees it. So anyway, moving forward, lesla-lar, or as we know her, Lar, basically comes in. She works with Edge. She comes into the Smallville Gazette and hands Lois her old Daily Planet contract, which came from her attorney. And it's basically an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, meaning that she can't publish anything against her former employer, who is now Morgan Edge because he bought the Daily Planet. So it's basically a gag order, and it's designed to scare them both into silence. And it works on Chrissy. Chrissy is terrified. She's doesn't want to print anything that might even remotely inspire the wrath of Morgan Edge while he's hanging around Smallville. Which Lois is defiant, of course, because Lois is like, she's a crusader for justice, and she thinks this guy is vile, and she wants to take him down. Meanwhile, back at the Tag, moping around his room, and we see he was the all-county wide receiver in his junior year. He's now a senior, and his arm is broken. So he feels like he's going to miss out on a big opportunity, maybe even a college scholarship. We don't know, but he's definitely getting more and more depressed by the day because of the situation with his arm. And then, meanwhile, he gets like really... Well, here, we'll just play the clip. Really, like, his arm starts itching, and then you see it start to vibrate like that really violently. So now clearly something really bizarre is going on here. Now, as far as we know, he was at a keg party, and his arm got broken in an accident. And now this is starting to take place. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that as we go forward. Great moment here. Cuts back to the Kent house. Clark's playing backyard football with the boys, and it's really kind of funny. He throws a pass to Jonathan, makes the play, and of course Clark, because he can run as fast as the speed of light, zips across the yard and takes it away from Jonathan. And then he turns around and throws a pass to Jordan, who's all uncoordinated and can't catch it. And Clark has this great, that's why he plays defense. It's just, I really love, and I'm going to keep saying it if you're watching all these reviews and you stick with me through them, Tyler Hoechlin's got Clark Kent down so well, and I really, really enjoy watching him play Clark. It's almost as if they don't need Superman in this show at all. He could just be Clark Kent the whole time, and I'll have a ball watching it. So anyway, Lois comes by and asks Clark if he will attend a town council meeting that night where they're taking a vote to whether or not to give the Morgan Edge Company exclusive rights to the mine in Smallville. The mine is named the Schuster Mine, and if you are a follower of Superman or DC Comics or comics lore at all, you'll know that Siegel and Schuster were the creators of Superman, so I'm curious to see where they get the Siegel name in there. Maybe I already missed it, but I don't think I have. So the mine is called the Schuster Mine, which is a little nod to one of the co-creators of Superman. Clark, of course, says he will go and make a speech representing Smallville, because as Lois puts it, it's something like, you're like the unofficial mayor. Like, you're the guy who left town and did well and then came back. He's kind of one of those, social icons around town. So maybe his voice would carry more weight if he went against Morgan Edge, and might be able to sway a lot of the people to vote against Morgan Edge. Meanwhile, the Cushings are at it again. They're setting up for the town council meeting and the vote, and Kyle's just gushing over this guy and how great Smallville is gonna be when they get his the trickle down, the economics. All the money is gonna filter down to all the people of Smallville once they give him his mining operation. And Lana just can't see it, and she doesn't understand why Kyle keeps defending this guy who's clearly got something going on, and she also wonders why Kyle couldn't see how when he was pressing her at dinner that it was making her uncomfortable, and she just didn't want to be there, and he just couldn't see it because he's just so far up Edge's behind that he's just blind to everything else. So then Lois treks down to the mining site, and there's Edge there with Lar, and confronts Edge, And they have this great little back and forth. It's pretty wild.
First you changed my story, then you sent some goon who almost killed Sharon Powell. Now you have your minion threatening my career? Let me tell you how this goes.
So they basically they threaten each other, and then they both ask each other what they're actually doing in Smallville. She says to Edge, what do you want with this town? What are you doing here? What do you need this mine for? What's really going on? And he turns it back on her and says, what are you doing here? Pulitzer Prize. Well, I don't know if she's won one, but he basically says a Pulitzer Prize level reporter. 2 of them, actually. And then, with 2 adolescent kids, and you leave a major city and both lose your jobs at the Planet to come live on this farm in Smallville. What are you doing here? And what are you protecting? So it was a little chess match taking place here between Lois and Edge, but she won't back down, which, as we know with Lois Lane, will probably get her in a little bit of trouble down the road.
You sue me, I countersue. Your records get opened up in Discovery, and that doesn't end well for you or your brand name.
My. You have thought this all through.
So that's Lois Lane in a nutshell, and I love the mental gymnastics these 2 are playing with each other. It's kind of cool how the show works on that level where Lois plays the cerebral chess matches with people, and Superman comes in with the muscle, right? So it's kind of cool. Thaddeus Kilgrave is being transported, a prisoner transfer from Metropolis to some other prison. And, of course, Lane had asked Superman to escort him, and he turned him down. Thaddeus Kilgrave, by the way, was introduced in Superman Volume 2, number 19 in 1988. And there he is up at the top. Not quite the same as he is in live action. He's kind of a small person in the comics. Same kind of thing. He's like a super scientist, super intellectual. So what happens in the scene is Kilgrave's riding in the armored police wagon, and he's chewing what you think is gum, and he spits it, and it hits the back door. And it turns out it's actually a synthetic polymer laced with all these different chemicals. And what they do is they respond to a, as he put it, like a timed vibration, or a timed... so it was like the guy's wristwatch, because it had a metronome. And after a certain amount of time, it ignited the thing, and it blew the doors off the back of the paddy wagon. At least that's how it was explained, because you don't see it actually happen. It happens off screen. You hear the explosion during a cut to another scene where Tag Harris, they're in a post-game, or the next day they're watching film of the game, and the coach is yelling at him about being lazy in spots and blah, blah, blah. And Tag gets up and walks out, and Jonathan follows him into the bathroom, and his arm is really going crazy, and the cast just explodes off his arm. Which is crazy. So Jonathan runs to get help from Clark, because he realizes that something bizarre is taking place in the bathroom there. And Clark comes in, and Tag's acting all normal and says his arm hurts, but he just said the cast was itching him too much, and he tore it off. He made an excuse, but Jonathan suspects more than Clark does, I think, at this point. But right now, at this point too, Lane calls Clark with the little beeper transmitter thing, because he has found out that Kilgrave is on the loose and escaped.
Dad,
Kilgrave has escaped.
something was not right about...
John, we'll talk about it later, okay? I have a call. I gotta go.
So once again, Clark has to decide between family and his responsibility to save the world. So, but knowing how dangerous Kilgrave can be, he's off and running. And also, I think he's got a little bit of the burden in his head that he was asked to be an escort and declined, and now the guy's loose. So now we see Kilgrave. He's sprung. He's got his little. He's got a little group of like cop. What would you call them? Bodyguards, armed bodyguards. And he whispers into this device. We don't hear what he says, and it kind of launches away. And when Superman lands, he finds it and picks it up, and there's a message on it that says, "I'll be seeing you soon, Big Blue." So again, Kilgrave, being a super intellectual genius level, is toying with Superman for a while and baiting him to come find him. So meanwhile, Lane has to return to the DOD, and on his way out, he sees the two boys outside, throwing the ball again, and stops to kind of he plays a little head game with them. And what he does is he explains how important their father's obligation is to the world and to saving people, and that in his mind, their little problems in Smallville are a distraction, and that if they distract him too much, people are going to die, is basically what he tells him. So he says, do the honorable thing, or something to that effect, and basically intimidates the boys into, when Dad's not home, leave him alone kind of thing. So and I've noticed in this episode too, really muddy, rainy weather. I think they shoot this in Vancouver, and man, they had a stretch of awful weather when they were shooting this episode. It made it work, but wow, it's really gross looking. I mean, this is supposed to be Smallville, Kansas, and it's a mud pit the whole episode. So back at the town council meeting, the vote is about to take place. Lois can't get hold of Clark, which means that it's almost a shoo-in that they're going to vote positive for Edge to get the mine. Meanwhile, Lana comes in, and Lois is a little abrasive when she sees her, and she's kind of like, not now. And you can tell immediately now that Lana is allied with Lois, and she's like, I don't like this freaking dude either, and asks Lois, can we go out for drinks tonight with no kids, no husbands, just me and you, and talk? So Lois agrees, and as expected, the whole town, except for Chrissy, votes for to give Morgan Edge Corporation exclusive rights to the Schuster mine. So bad times are coming to Smallville, gang.
No, it's not.
Oh, before I get into that, I just want to say that the next scene, Clark comes in and apologizes for missing the vote, and Lois is like, it's fine. And I clipped this little dialogue only because, again, it's a great example of just how awesome their little family dynamic is and their support system for each other is. And I love it again. In kind of where you'll see Lois thinks that Clark is using his abilities to tell how she's feeling, but it's just something he's noticed that she does. She has a tick, and it's something he's noticed. So you'll see.
No, it's not. And you're covering.
Don't super spy on my pulse rate or whatever you do.
You clench your jaw when you're mad.
I'm not mad.
I just thought that was great. She thinks he's, scanning her pulse rate and whatnot to see if she's lying, and he's like, no, you clenched your jaw. And the expression on his face, I mean, again, the dude has Clark Kent down. So the girls go out to drink, and they're both kind of a little bummed. Actually, before that last scene with Clark and Lois, I forgot to mention too that Lois says to Clark on her way out the door to meet Lana that she feels like she's slipped all the way to the bottom of his priority list, with Lane in his ear, with saving the planet and the needs of the boys. She just feels like she can barely get an ounce of his time these days. So that tees up this scene in which both of them are kind of down on their husbands. Lana's down on Kyle because he fails to see what her issues are with Lane, Edge and whatnot, and Lois, same deal with Clark, of course, which we saw in the previous scene. And what happens is they each tell each other what they've noticed about, and Lana's known Clark forever, but they talk about how those guys they're in love with their wives, and how they're there for them, and how they believe in them and whatnot. And they kind of almost come to a realization that, oh yeah, maybe we've been taking our husbands for granted. more or less, at this point. So it's really interesting because the scene starts, you almost think it's going to be man bash time, and it's just not. Whoop, went too far. Meanwhile, the boys are at a football party, another party. There's 2 in this episode. Boy, they're happy about that one win. And Jordan is talking to Sarah. Sarah? Yeah, Sarah. And, you know, he's like happy. He says he's like happy for the first time in a long time. He doesn't feel anxiety or depression. He's part of something now, and it really has grounded him. So it's a nice scene for Jordan, because when you go back to the pilot and you saw like how tortured this kid was, and here we are only 4 episodes later, and he's kind of growing, and he's found his footing a little bit because he joined the football team, and that was all on his own accord. He wasn't dared, he wasn't pushed, he wasn't asked, and he's really happy with the decision to do a walk-on with the football team and then make an immediate impact and make friends. So yeah, it's kind of a little heartwarming moment, lost in a bunch of heartwarming moments in this show. Meanwhile, our good friend Tag, he's having more issues again. Now his arm is really vibrating and it looks painful. It's got a gash in it, and it's shaking out of control, and he ends up breaking a table. Down goes Frasier. So after a confrontation with the kid whose parents own the table, Tag runs out. Jonathan chases after him out into the woods. And then meanwhile...
Blaster to work. I needed you in closer range. Now pay attention. Let me show you what this baby can do.
Superman walks right into the trap. He finds Kilgrave, like in this town square, and Kilgrave starts blasting him over and over and over again with this sonic blaster rifle, which is, you know, it's disabling Superman at this point. And Kilgrave says to him that he was plotting all this from prison because he was tracking Superman's, tracking his patterns, and he noticed that he wasn't flying over Metropolis or patrolling Metropolis much at all anymore, and that he had been out in the country. And he says this gave him the plan, and he was able to take advantage of it because that showed him that Superman was distracted and vulnerable. And those were like exactly the 2 terms that Lane used early in the episode to Clark's face, to Lois's face, and then to the boys. That this kind of priority shift in Clark's life is making him distracted and vulnerable. Lane said that to all of them, and now Kilgrave reinforces it by saying, when I was watching your patterns and noticing that you've been missing, I now know you're distracted and therefore vulnerable. So again, really good writing. It comes full circle here, and Clark's down for the count here. You could see like his inner ear is all burning out, and really doesn't know how to deal with this sonic thing. And the whole time I'm watching him getting shot over and over again, I was thinking one thing, and that's going to be coming up in a second. But
Tag, just breathe. Just breathe. It's gonna be okay.
So we cut back to Tag. He's like, you can see, he's vibrating out of control. Jordan immediately thinks he caused this problem. Somehow he thinks his heat vision blowing up the gas cans at the bonfire in the first episode did something to affect Tag. And of course Jonathan thinks that's ridiculous, but Jordan's convinced he did it. So Jordan wanders over to Tag and grabs him by the arm, thinking, I can stop this from happening because I have a touch of superpowers and I caused this, so I'm the root of the problem. I can stop this. And Tag just like flings him like 20 yards, and he hits a tree or whatever. And then Tag starts like zipping around the woods. There's no other way to put it. He's not teleporting, but he's having these bursts of speed that he can't control, and he's like smashing into trees and blowing them up and whatnot. It's crazy. So there it is, where Jordan grabs him by the arm, and so while that's going on, Jonathan grabs the transmitter and calls for Clark's help.
We need to get out of here now. We need Dad.
So at this point, you know, and prior to it, while he's getting hit with his sonic blaster, I'm thinking, why don't you just do this? Just do this. He just did that. I was like, thank God. I was like, come on, man. I know enough about Superman. Just do that. It was like pulling teeth waiting for him to get there. But he did. He got there. He destroys the sonic blaster with the heat vision, calls Lane and says, come pick Kilgrave and his cronies up. They're all unconscious laying here at the town square. Whatnot. I got to go. And he flies off. He zips into the woods, picks up Tag, flies him up into the upper atmosphere where the air's thin. That'll calm him down, kind of just tranquilizes him, for lack of a better term. And Clark realizes, or Superman, or Clark-a-Man, Super Clark, realizes that this is someone with superpowers that needs to be taken into custody, and we've got to figure out what's wrong with this poor kid. So, meanwhile, again, Jordan continues to blame himself for what he did, and mostly because he blew up the gas cans, and he you know, with the heat vision out of rage, which gives him that extra layer of guilt that he lost control and he hurt people, and he feels responsible. And you know, Jonathan says, look, I'll admit I was a little jealous that you have powers and I don't, but the one thing you are not is a killer, and one thing you won't do is hurt. You wouldn't hurt a soul. And what happened was completely an accident, and you just can't blame yourself. And again, another great scene, and you'll notice the warm orange palette. The brothers are there for one another, and it's very natural and very real, and this is why this show has worked for me so far. So the next scene, Lane is back at the house, and he's explaining what they found. So they took Tag to the DOD, and they examined him, and what they found was a yellow phosphor substance, is how he explained it, that was ignited when the heat vision ignited the gas cans at the bonfire. And they think that yellow phosphor may have like unlocked some metahuman genetics inside Tag. So he's going to be undergoing tests at the DOD, and then put in as they put it in the show, a special school for kids with superpowers, which Jonathan thinks is cool and Jordan thinks is horrible. So, but then Clark wants to cut to the root of the issue, and he says, if you guys knew this was going on with him, or you suspected something, why didn't you call me earlier?
Why didn't you call me the minute you knew something was wrong?
That is the face of guilt, folks. Busted. They find out that Lane had lectured the boys on distracting Superman, distracting Clark, and that could cost lives. So, you know, basically told him, take the beeper and bury it, and they did. To which Clark just gets really incensed and tells Lane off and tells him, you don't mess with my family. You don't tell me that I can't protect my boys. And Lane hits him back with the usual rhetoric that, you know, you're slipping, you're not prioritizing what's more important, millions of lives at stake, blah, 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 blah. And then Lois finally has enough. She steps in and basically calls out Lane for being the absentee dad that he was, because he was too devoted to his job and his career and not devoting enough time to being a dad. And that Clark is trying his best to balance all worlds. And really goes to bat for Clark, and it's pretty awesome. You know, she talks about what a great father he is, and how he does have the weight of the world on his shoulders, and he has to deal with it every day. And then she tells him that if you're going to come into this house and instigate these kind of arguments, you're not going to be welcome here anymore. So he leaves, and then we cut to the Cushing house. And if you've watched my first 3 reviews, I've talked a lot about the color palette on this show, and I didn't talk about it much because I don't want to keep being redundant, but this scene here is really interesting. So the scene opens, and it's got that bluish wash to it, and Kyle's cooking breakfast for the 2 girls, and in walks Lana, looks a little hungover. Maybe she had too much to drink out with Lois. And Lana has a different vibe this morning, and she sees what Kyle's doing for the kids, and she appreciates him. And as the scene goes on, and they move over to the kitchen window, and they become a little more intimate, it starts to, each cut gets a little more orange and a little warmer, and it culminates with them falling in love again, and it's in front of the two kids, which they're, of course, like two kids would be. Gross mom, gross dad. So hope for the Cushing family, maybe. Next scene quickly cuts. Jordan's leading Lois outside late at night to the barn. She says, what do you want me? He says, I don't know what's in there. It's just go, and I think it's a surprise. And in she walks, and Clark has this beautiful romantic dinner all set up by candlelight and with wine and whatnot. And right as they're about to enjoy a nice quiet night together, Lois's phone rings. It's General Lane, and he's trying to avoid pissing off Clark, so he calls her instead to talk about some kind of an uprising in Malawi that he thinks might be a problem within the hour. And because he didn't want to intrude on Clark, he just wants Lois to deliver. But Clark talks to him on Lois's phone, and he said, thanks for keeping me informed, General. I'll see what I can do, or something to that effect. Doesn't commit to going or not. Hangs up the phone, and
I was calling Lois so she could fill you in, and you could decide for yourself if you want to get involved. Is she there?
Actually, that's right. I cut this into two parts so I wouldn't get copyright tagged. So you can see right there, she doesn't even want to talk to him. Clark's kind of put on the spot. And then after he hangs up and he says, thanks for informing me, I'll see what I can do about it. He looks at Lois.
Go.
I'll be fast, I promise.
I'll be waiting. Hey, I love you too.
Cute little scene, perfect in tone. This is why I love this show so far. I mean, it really, it just hits all the right notes for me as a Superman fan, as a Clark Kent fan, as a Lois Lane fan. We haven't had the big bad yet. We haven't had, that maybe even that cosmic threat or that world-ending threat yet. We don't need it yet. It's slowly teeing up, and so far it's hit all the right notes. I've yet to complain about anything really in the show. So a couple last things. Lane then picks up the phone, calls a branch of the DOD, and says, let us implement Project 7734, which from the comic books is to safeguard the Earth against extraterrestrial threats. So he's got that Superman dog tag. It's got the Superman S, and then on the back it says 7734, or upside down, hell.
We now own the rights to this land, which holds enough X-kryptonite to resurrect an army.
So the last scene is that Lar and Edge are at the mine, the Schuster mine, which they now own, and it's full of X-kryptonite. So now we know what he wants with the mine. And X-kryptonite, from the comics, can endow humans with some Kryptonian-like superpowers, although an outside catalyst, such as an explosion, is required. So knowing that now, yellow substance, it's yellow in color, it can endow normal humans with Kryptonian-like powers, and it needs a catalyst like an explosion. So we're going back to Tag. Tag was at the party. Jordan heat visioned the bonfire and the gas cans. The yellow powder-like substance, which was probably X-kryptonite, was there. It blew up, and now Tag has superpowers. And the X-kryptonite made its debut in Action Comics, number 26 in 1960. So that's it for the episode Haywire. Again, I thought this was going to be kind of a review, but it was the very dense episode. A lot of little subplots, a lot of You see it branching out. It can go a lot of different ways. If anything, the filler was the Kilgrave stuff. So that's it for me. Love to hear your comments on this episode. If you liked the video, please give us a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you do, press the little bell icon and you'll get notified every time we drop new content here. And I will be back with a review of episode 5 very, very soon. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel. If you subscribe, make sure you click the little bell icon to be notified anytime someone from our show drops new content here. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.
Say, kids, what time is that?